In this video, I want to show you guys how to correct one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're doing headlight restoration that you don't notice you did until it's over, and I want to show you some of the simplest techniques you can implement to make sure it's perfect every single time. Now, before I jump into the content of this video, I want to make a quick announcement. On April 4th, I am hosting a live business training via Zoom. You can join wherever you have internet. If you are an entrepreneur first and a detailer second, and you want detailing to be a legitimate business, a legitimate income source for you, and you want to learn how to scale to 6 figures, use the link in the YouTube description box below, wilsonautodetailing.com/register. It is completely free, and I only host these about once or twice a year. This is content that is not on my social pages. It is business heavy, and if you are an entrepreneur first and a detailer second like me, and you want to learn how to bring ceramic coating customers to you without having to do a bunch of paid ads, hire a marketing agency, hire employees, try to overspend on tools and products, or get a big expensive garage and van that you absolutely do not need, this training is for you. Anyone can do this, beginners or people who are already in their detailing business but they need to grow. We're going to be talking about how to make over $8,400 per month through detailing with a tried, true, proven system. If you can't tell, I could not be more excited about this event. April 4th is the day, and if you are there live, I'm going to be giving away one of the most expensive things I've ever given away, and just as a spoiler, we actually do show it in this video. That's all I'm going to say. See you guys on April 4th. Now back to the video. Now when it comes to the #1 headlight restoration mistake you can make, I want to tell you exactly what it's called because it actually comes up in the wet sanding world often when we are detailing, and it's what I call tracers. When you are talking to different wet sanding experts, they will talk about something called tracers, and essentially a tracer looks like, on a headlight specifically, if you look at the headlight after it's been restored in the sun, it looks kind of like this hologrammy appearance where when the light moves across the headlight lens in different ways, it almost looks like the plastic is like warped in one particular area, a little bit more shiny, a little less shiny in one area, and it's kind of this spirally shiny effect. Hopefully that explains it well enough. Basically, this happens because when we are sanding off the clear coated surface of the headlight, we've got our machine sander going, and we're basically kind of going in all these different patterns, right? So when you're sanding off the clear coat, you don't have a particular crosshatch pattern, horizontal passes, vertical passes, or a specific pattern you're making when you are sanding it off. You're just kind of going all over and sanding everywhere you can, right? And in some areas, you have to sand more deeply because that particular area has more clear coat on it. It hasn't flaked off or faded off. And then in other areas, you don't have to sand quite as much. Basically, what this leads to is this uneven distribution of your sanding pattern and sanding pressure. And essentially, a tracer is an area where, if you can think about overlapping with a sander on top of car paint, the area where you overlap with a sander as you're moving vertically or horizontally is going to get a deeper cut because essentially it's like a lawnmower that goes over the lawn, right? When you make a row and you're cutting on a row, then you turn around and cut that row again, or the row next to it, there's a small area of overlap, and it sometimes puts these little like stripes in a grass yard, and you can see them really clearly when the grass is green. That's what's happening on the headlight. That's what's happening on car paint. When you sand one way, then sand the other way, that small area of overlap that has a deeper bite because it was essentially sanded twice is what we would call a tracer. Well, the problem with tracers on headlights is that they are more difficult to deal with because when you're dealing with tracers on car paint, you actually know where they are. They're relatively easy to see. You're dealing with clear coat, and so you can see it, especially on dark paint. On a plastic headlight, it's actually relatively difficult to figure out where they are and where they're not because you're not sanding in any particular pattern, and you don't know which areas had a deeper bite and which areas didn't unless you're really, really paying attention. And so essentially, we have to figure out how to get a more even scratch pattern while we're finishing sanding the headlight, because sometimes we're going to have to bite in some areas more than others. There's no other way to get around it to get the clear coat off. So how do we get a more even distribution of sanding bite or sanding pressure? Well, the simple way to fix this is after I have sanded off all of the clear coat with my most aggressive piece of sandpaper, in this case, it was 1500. That's as aggressive as I got. When I finish and all the clear coat is removed, I'm going to spend some time with no pressure with my foam interface going over the headlight over and over and over and over again, maybe 3 or 4 minutes worth, sanding with that 1500 grit in order to basically create an even pressure of distribution of 1500 grit sanding marks. Now, the reason this fixes the quote-unquote tracer problem is because if I didn't do that, what I'm left with when I switch to my 3000 grit or 2500 grit to kind of refine the sanding marks before I come in with my polisher is I'm going to have these 1500 deep bite scratches that are deeper in some areas, not as deep in other areas. And so when I finally come and I polish out the headlight, I actually see those again in the form of that hologrammy appearance. It's actually a big deal, and you want to get rid of it because it does not look good. So before I come in with my refining stage, I basically pull up the pressure. I'll spend 3 minutes going over in the same exact pattern over and over and over again on the headlight, horizontally, vertically. You pick which pattern you want, but that's all I'm doing. No pressure, relatively high speed on the polisher, a little bit above average, so above 3 or above 4, generally on a 6-speed polisher like this Mirka. And I'm going to pull my polisher over and over and over, or my sander over and over the headlight, and that's going to basically create a more even distribution of 1500 grit sanding marks. Then I can come in very simply and basically spend the same amount of time, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, with my 3000 grit and call it a day. Now, some of you may have already concluded this, but this is one of the reasons why I think it's actually pretty important to wet sand headlights by machine and not necessarily by hand, because you are going to get a crazy amount of uneven pressure if you are sanding by hand, which is totally fine and it's totally doable. It also just sucks in terms of the amount of manual labor it takes, but my point is, it is very easy to get problems like I'm describing, these hologrammy appearance after the headlight is restored, if you're doing it by hand, because it is just impossible to distribute the pressure evenly. So I love my Mirka sander that you see me using in this video, but the bottom line is, for a detailer, if you use any type of 3-inch random orbital dual action polisher, that is going to work as a 3-inch sander for headlights like this very, very easily. Put a foam interface, half an inch foam interface, and then your 1500 grit or your 1000 grit, whatever type of sandpaper cut you want to make, put that on the end of the foam interface, and you're going to get a great scratch pattern. The other thing I'm doing here is finishing with a foam pad rather than a microfiber pad. A microfiber pad would finish this faster, and it would allow me to spend less time. The reason I'm using an inch thick or a 3/4 inch thick foam pad is because I'm going to be going over the paint a little bit as I try to get into the cracks and crevices of the headlight, and this is going to essentially make it really easy for me to remove the tape and not have to pay so much attention to what I'm doing. Essentially, it just makes for a really, really simple polishing experience, because I can drag that foam pad over the paint, over the headlight, and get the whole thing done without having to worry about the edges or anything like that. So I remove the tape and I go ahead and finish the job that way, even though it probably takes a little bit longer with the foam pad. Then I'm going to put a ceramic coating that is a very long-lasting ceramic coating on these headlights, and because this is a car that I'm going to be maintaining and putting a ceramic coating on, it is going to be very easy to keep these headlights in this particular condition. Guys, as always, I'm going to be linking up all the tools and products that I used in this video in the YouTube description box below. Remember, you can register for the live event on April 4th, but the first link in the YouTube description box below, and I would not miss it if I were you. And as we sign off here, I'm going to show you a before and after picture of the headlights so that you guys can see exactly what was done here. And when I talk about shaving off that really degraded clear coat, you're going to see that in the first picture right about now.